Remember, please hit like and subscribe for me. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go. Hi, everyone. Today is Monday, June the 16th, and this is the Moneyball Morning Report for the Benzinga Pro platform. My name is Anne-Marie Band. We've got a Fed meeting this week on Wednesday, June the 18th. Today, nothing much going on. Tomorrow, retail sales, industrial production, housing market index, all of those could do a few things, but housing starts and jobless claims on Wednesday, EIA report, and then FOMC, right? So Thursday markets are closed, and please remember, Friday I will be out of the office. This is a quad witching. They've got a quad witching. It's really still triple witching. But this is probably going to be a pretty volatile day. Hands off. I am hands off from this space. Okay, let's get to the charts. We begin with the E-Mini S&P 500. We had a very wide opening range. Of course, we had the conflict continuing in the Middle East. A lot of back channel work going on there. And so for those folks who get up and are surprised that the market is running upward, remember the stats say that it takes about 72 hours before the market just slips back into range when a Mideast conflict breaks out. And the risk of contagion at this juncture feels quite small. So now we focus on, well, what might be happening in general. We've got the opening range in the ES from 5,945 to 5,986. We've got the expected move on the day at around 60.30. On the high side, an expected move on the low side, 5,928. The weekly expected move is fairly wide, so there's a bit of volatility in the chart. So my thought here, folks, would be you want to be careful today in terms of potential whipsaw. Overall, we've got trend that looks a little bit down in general, right? Still making lower highs. But if we were to draw a trend line here, we can't really draw a good one. It's pretty ugly. That works all right. I do suspect that we head to the top of the expected move and then head back to the bottom. What's the trade? Pullbacks or buy zones? We are sitting above the VWAP. We are sitting outside of the 1 hour opening range, and we are trying to push ourselves up into the 60-30 area. We could be quite range bound today, right? Average true range events are a little bit lower, and so we've got the high on the average move, the average range at 6,024, the low of the average range 5,873. Momentum is up, and so we're getting into the top edge of momentum. I don't like buying the breakouts here, but I would like to see a retest of the breakout formation. Perhaps something to the left here might show how it ends up looking over time. All right, so that's it for the ES. Let's go to the NQ. Staring down the E-Mini Nasdaq, we also had a very wide opening range. Low edge of that range, 21,500. High edge of the range, 21,700. We sat for several hours around this area and then broke to the north. For those of us that look at ranges, we can see that they build inventory right here in the opening part of the day, and then we are now in distribution. Okay, so this essentially tells us we're at the top of that expected move as a target. The high of the expected move, 21,835. The low of the expected move, 21,470. Average true range, where are we here? Average true range on the NQ high, 21,890. On the low side, 21,211. Weekly expected moves are really far away in general. There's a lot of volatility and uncertainty built into the charts. And this is what we are generally seeing here, though here's a range. They started accumulating here again, and now they are in a little bit of distribution. So I do expect a little bit more upside pressure before we fall back into the range, which is what I think we're going to do. Yeah, trend slightly down to flat, but we are above the VWAP. Momentum very high, usually gives us a fade from that relative formation. We'll see what goes on. I suspect dips are buy zones, but we might get a big shock event dip. So you want to be light and tight. Take it small size up into the targets, get out, reset, take it small size, get out, right? Unless we get the good fortune of having a savage spike, at which point we'll see buyers still come in general. All right, that's the NQ. Let's go to the YM. The E-Mini Dow futures. We've got a month-end expected move, not that far away, but let's take a look at the opening ranges. We've got a low end of about 41,920, the high end of the opening range, 42,200. We sat here for many hours, accumulation, building inventory, distribution, now building more inventory. That looks bullish into the press of high volume candlesticks of prior days, as well as the opening range. I'm seeing a high around 42,650 or so. And look at all the candlesticks. Check out this. Hourly range, big candle, hourly range, hourly range, hourly range. I suspect they move right back into that heavy congestion on the upside. Where are they battling now? The highest volume candlestick of Friday was at 10 a.m. And we are sitting at the top of that range. So spike out, pretty likely. Staying there, I don't know. That's a coin toss in my mind. That's definitely a coin toss. All right. Yeah. Expected move high, 42,830. Expected move low, 41,530. Let's go to micro Bitcoin. All right, opening range fairly tight, right? Low of the opening range, 105,000 and some change. High of the expected range, 105,680. So tight range, pulled out, pulled back in, still made a higher low. Have a look. It's still making higher lows. This looks like a bear flag to me, but as long as we hold higher lows, price action should be in buy the dip. Trend is down, but the VWAP continues upside. Momentum fairly high, right? But this does look suspiciously like a bear flag, and of course bear flags do have bullish slope. Okay, so taking a peek at that formation, that's what we are staring down. So about a $600 opening range. High of the expected move today, 108,100. Low of the expected move today, 103,350. High volume candlestick formation, yes, Friday's trading day, and that gives us a high somewhere of around 106,000 that we might look at for support. Yeah, that's what we're staring down. My thought here, from a bigger picture, let's look at a 4-hour here. You can see that we're sitting in this very landlocked space. So my suspicion is bounces up and over the expected move, wait for it to collapse back into the range, and that would make for a really nice short. That's what I'm thinking. Let's go to copper. I had a copper trade this morning Absolutely love this chart. It's so beautiful, right? So $4.80 is a very important support edge for this chart. You can see it's sort of making an inverted head and shoulders pattern. War in general is very good for commodities. So we are looking for copper to hold $4.79. All right, so let's get back to the 1 hour chart. What do we have for trend? Well, it's kind of down, right? We are above the VWAP. We've got higher lows printing. And so there is some measure of topping that could occur here at around 486 while the chart tries to hold higher. My suspicion is that we head all the way up to 488. All right, and so pullbacks will be buy zones. You can see it very sideways here, right? Do you want to buy the top? I wouldn't. I'd wait for a fade because the moving averages are flat. Momentum, mixed, right? It's mixed but not negative, that's for sure, right? And so that's what we're staring down. Pullbacks are buy zones. I expect copper to do a fair bit of running in terms of its overall motion. Let me go back to I would not be surprised if this chart moves into $4.90. All right, next, oil. Now, if you watched me on market kickoff last night, pardon me, allergies. If you watched me on market kickoff last night, I said, hey, a lot of people are going to be thinking that oil is going to be this great big move to the upside. And indeed, it gapped up, tested the high of Friday, and then rotated all the way back down. And so I was saying to the folks, listen, if we can't hold an expected move line, then we know the price action is very likely to force its way back into the range. So let's take a look at this oil chart. Opening range, $74.29 to $77.49. That's a pretty big candlestick formation. And so, hang on, folks. With a $3 move like that, it's got to hold because that's reflexive action. Very wide opening range. Candlesticks don't normally do that, but we do know it's geopolitical uncertainty that has us there. The high of the expected move on the daily is $75.95. Notice that's in the middle of the opening range. And I also got a great question from one tired trader who said, hey, is it okay to trade inside of this opening range? And of course, the answer is yes. There's no absolute no's that the market has other than manage your risk, right? You don't want to go into a trade without managing your risk. But if it does bounce into this area at 75, it needs to reject it. You need to see rejection candlesticks, or it'll likely go into the high of the weekly implied vol move, which is all the way up at 78.50. That being said, low of the expected move, $70.40. That's essentially where I would see it. Notice the average true range all the way up here at $75.65. Notice how they tried and tried and tried and tried, building inventory here, and then, right, we have distribution at a discount. And so I suspect the traders will try to hold this range. If not, we'll see $70.40 as the target on the downside. Trend, a little bit mixed. It's up on the moving average. We are under the VWAP, and that means that people who are long are underwater. So we want to be very careful there. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is another one. A lot of people thinking it was going to shoot the moon. But, we've got 72 hours where unrest in the Mideast is normally digested in the market. And so here we are seeing ourselves right at the 72-hour was actually over the weekend. So what are we staring down? Opening range for gold, low end of the opening range, 3,441. High end of the opening range, 3,477. So we're looking like at about 33 points, something like that. High of the expected move today, $3,485. Low of the expected move today, $3,418. What's the trend? Dips are clearly buy zones in this environment. So I would watch for price action to hold the current zone. They're building inventory. If it breaks back into the low of the opening range, that's 3,443, it's got to get up over this VWAP. So it's very noisy. I would wait for a retest of that formation inside of that opening range to see if it would hold to continue upside pressure. Otherwise, it's going to take a little bit of a breath. And this is the 3 days of geopolitical motion that we are staring down. Pullbacks, most definitively buy zones here. Momentum sitting on the low edge of the range, that normally brings us buying pressure, especially if we've got an upward moving average. If you want to go ahead and jump in on this trade, you can, but I would use micros since that's a fair bit of risk sitting there. Commodities do have updrafts in general under elements of war. All right, let's go to SPY. This is very interesting. Now, the SPY just finally broke out. It pulled back to the low of the opening range. Low of the opening range, approximately $599.60. High of the opening range, $600.27. Between 600 and 602, we've got a lot of GEX levels. The gamma lines are sitting around 602 all the way to 604 and some change, which falls in line with our average daily range high, which looks like $604.58 on the high side, right? So chart's trying to bounce out. High of the expected move today, $605.59, thereabouts. Low of the expected move today, $595.12. Trend is kind of flat, right? So I would expect, and look at where the high volume candlestick here is. We are well above that zone. Let's draw Fibonacci just for grins. We are at the 2.5 marker. I easily see it. I would expect that it would go to 4. Right to the top of that expected move. Let's remove that. Yeah, so I do expect continued upside action into this area. Way too many people are short. This is not, I don't know how long it's been since they've had, I'm going to call it a disagreement like this. It's been a little bit, so some of the newer traders maybe not seeing what's going on here. And then, we've got reflexive action. If you're watching the news, you're probably looking for a pillow and a blanket to get under the bed. But that being said, pullbacks are buy zones. This is in a very wide range. And I would let some of this volatility leak out if you're trying to go long any kinds of options today, as opposed to going short at the top of the ranges out of the gate. That looks pretty good to me. All right, lastly, let's take a look at the Qs. Here we are staring down the Nasdaq ETF, and we had a savage dip down. Wow, that just happened a few moments ago. Opening range fairly tight. $529.45 on the low, $530.28 on the high. We've expanded both below the opening range and above the opening range. Moving average is flat. Thursday's closing VWAP, $533. This is something to really watch. It's very wide. The ranges are quite wide, relatively speaking. We've got implied volatility, spiking, and so we really want to watch that. Momentum up, trend flat, right? High of the expected move today, $535.96. I wouldn't be surprised if it went up and over into the big fat round number at 536. And the low of the expected move, $525. To me, across the board, today looks like it's a range-based day with a lot of traders trying to gain direction because they think the move is going to be big based on the implied vol. But I think the option sellers are probably going to win today. That being said, be very careful. Look for the dips to buy and look for the spikes to sell, but wait for confirmation of the reversal of trend in both directions. Wait for that confirmation of the reversal of trend before hitting in. All right, everyone, that's it for me. I'll see you on the streams.